raise our hands or we just speak?
If you can just
Yes.
speak, yeah. Yeah, just speak.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi. It's Blessing. Can you hear me
Hello.
okay?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. So I have a question with regards to the issue of sin and judgment, or sin and punishment. So I think you said the United States is punished by a strike by Islam because of the sin to do with the election or something. Am I phrasing it correctly?
Yeah, the sin, it begins with the voter suppression at the election and before, and then finally culminates in the certification. So all the processes in this democratic process to keep an extremist out of power, they all failed. It begins already before at the RNC, then goes to the election, then the electoral college. All those processes are there to prevent someone to come into office who is not fit for office. And the certification is the very last moment when objections could have been made. So I would mark this as it would place the marker there because it's the very last moment where things could have been turned around.
Okay. So that would be the reason for the strike by Islamic terrorists. Is
Yes,
that what?
not for them, it's not the reason, of course, but in the prophetic story, I would mark this as the sin, as the apostasy, bringing down the glorious land. And this is the scourge that God brings upon the glorious land for destroying itself.
Okay. Okay, that's so my question then is we normally say the glorious land, or Israel, is scourged for sin by Babylon, or the king of the north, and that the east wind is a scourge against the king of the north. So is that how you understand it?
Yeah, it's a scourge against the army of Rome in the first place. So, I mean, the third woe is a scourge against the army of Rome. So we saw it in the first and second woe. And the army of Rome, we can discuss about that, who that is. Is it the sixth kingdom? Is it the glorious land? Is it the seventh kingdom? I believe at the Sunday law, it's the sixth kingdom because this is ended here. They commit the sin. The Sunday law movement or the seventh kingdom begins already before, but the power is transferred to them at January 2025, and then they reign. So I also think that they will be scourged at close of probation. So I say in the Sunday law waymark, it's only a hurting, it's a strike, it's not a killing. And at the Sunday law, close of probation is for the glorious land. So we can talk about close of probation as well. We could see east wind there as well. And then this is against the Sunday law movement because the glorious land does not exist anymore at the close of probation waymark.
Okay, so you're saying at the Sunday law, the sixth kingdom is the king of the north being scourged by the east wind. Just to summarize what we just said.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah. I would not go into the discussion who exactly is the king of the north. I think I'm not qualified to do that. There's still things to discover. Also, Paminda did studies on this now recently. But yeah, at the Sunday law, it's a hurting, and at close of probation, it's a killing.
Okay, I'll thank you for the response.
Thank you. Curtis has his hand.
Hi, Elena. I just wanted to go back to some of the models, and start there. So the first one that I had a question about was the line of the Magi. We'll do that one. So when Aldertest did those studies in 2017, as you said, we didn't have the namings that we have today. And Prediction Before Midnight and Midnight were said in a specific context of where the studies were at the time. And if I remember correctly, Midnight, when we spoke about it at that time, was in reference to what we would call today as Raphia. So the Mara experience that was attached to that waymark, I think she had it on the board, if I remember your picture correctly. The Mara experience that we attached to Midnight, and that whole framing, that whole framework was associated with what today we associate with Raphia. And so I'm wondering, I wanted to ask, are you reinterpreting how we understood it in the past? Or are you saying that in the past we just had it wrong, and so this is the right way to understand it? Like, what are you doing with that?
I didn't hear her saying explicitly that it's Raphia. I heard only Midnight. Maybe there was another study where she said it's Raphia. So I think back then our structure was not yet so clear. So sorry, I lost my point. Sorry. So what did I want to say? The thing is, Midway or Midnight, we have seen now with the study of X27 is 2019 for the ship. For the ship is Midnight 2019, Midnight Cry 2021, and Close of Probation at the Sunday Law waymark. But for us, when we didn't make the distinction back then, Aldertest did not make the distinction between the line of the institution and the Sunday Law and the line of the 144,000. So on the line of the institution, 2019 is clearly Midnight, but on our line, on the line of the 144,000, 2019, is not Midnight. It cannot be. On our line, Midnight is Midway, and Midway is always a Sunday Law waymark. So it could either be on the line of the priests, 2014 Midway, or on the line of the 144,000 Sunday Law. For me, there's only those two options, because it's clearly not a line of the institution. It's a line it's about the Magi, the Watchmen, the 5 virgins. So it must either speak about the priests or about the 144,000. And their Midway can only be 2014 or Sunday Law waymark.
So I understand that, and I appreciate that. So I guess what I was hinting at is you're making a different application to what we did in the past, which is fine. You could do that. I'm trying to point that out, that at the time, Midnight wasn't in reference to the Sunday Law, because then Aldertest comes along and shows what you pointed out in Acts 27, that Midnight is actually before that close of probation of the ship and etc. And that's the Midnight that was being referenced to. So when you do this modeling, I would just like some clarity that like how you take that original framing to now make it into this application that you're making.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. It's important.
Mhm. I have another question, but I don't want to take up all the questions. So if anyone else has another question, they can carry on. Okay, I'll ask another question.
I have.
Okay, go on, Natalie.
Thanks, Curtis. Hi. Can I just clarify you, because you did say further along your message about Islam being at the close of probation, Daniel 12:1 being the scourge. Is that correct?
On the line of the individuals, on the 144,000, I would say it, yes. But
Okay.
I have no, so I want to clarify that the quote 9011 is clearly speaking about close of probation waymark. Elder Parminder also made that very clear in his presentations last year. So Ellen White's context is close of probation, the final judgment. And I do not say that we do not see Islam at the close of probation waymark, but I think we need more evidence for it. We need more, we need line upon line. We need different stories that confirm it. For me, only the quote 9011 is not enough. We always have line upon line. So I really would like to see some lines where it's showing that Islam is seen as close of probation.
Thank you.
Additionally to that, according to my lines, I would say we see them as well at the Sunday law waymark.
Thank you. Can I ask one more question? When you talk about Exeter, the Sunday before the Sunday law 2020, you say 2025, but I think you put Exeter at 2024. Can you tell me, please, not regarding Islam, but regarding the Sunday law, if you can, tell me what Exeter was in 2024?
I think it's July, the RNC.
Okay.
And also the whole, of course, the whole story, also the election and the Electoral College, but July definitely is a waymark.
Thank you. Can you give me also, last question, can you tell me when the temple cleansing was on the line of the priest and the line of the 144,000?
Yes, I opened the share the screen.
Thank you.
So the first one was in 2021, as Elder Tess laid it out. And I would say the second one is at the loud cry. It's both an Exeter, it's the final warning, it's the message of equality. Yeah.
Yeah, I thank you for that clarification. I thought you put it somewhere else on another line. I can't remember which one now. No. Okay, that's great then. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions for Eleanor?
Yeah, this is Charity. I just wanted to understand something.
Mm-hmm.
If that's good. Okay, so you spoke about the issue of voter. You said election fraud or voter fraud. What did you say?
Yeah, I spoke about voter suppression in the first place. So
Yes,
there is a difference between election fraud and voter fraud. I always mix it up. One is when people really cheat, when they vote several times, when an illegal citizen vote, but this really don't happen. It happens so rarely, but that Republicans use it and say our voting system has to be more secure. We have to make more laws to prevent this from happening, but it really does not happen. So that's the difference.
Okay, So now, in connection with that, so your argument is that whenever the Republicans have won elections, is that from 2000, that they have won through cheating?
I would not claim that they never would win fairly, but there is a history of voter suppression, definitely. This documentary, Vigilantes Inc., it's really, really good to watch, and they trace the elections back to the beginning of the USA. And we already then knew at the beginning, with the 3/5 clause and all of this, it was based upon racism. So the whole system from the beginning was not fair. It was not equal, because the white and rich people always tried to avoid that the blacks or other minorities get the power over them. So they did implement systems to exactly avoid that. And this can be traced back to the beginnings of the USA, and now we saw it very clearly in the last years with all those laws.
Okay, so what you are marking is from 2001 and 2001, 2016, and 2024 elections, and that the way they won was through cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I guess my question goes into, because you've been tracing the story of the institution and how generally the whole system connected to elections in America is complicated, and is also it's riddled with a lot of problems, right?
Yeah.
And if we are saying it has problems, does that not require us to also see that because of that, it affects both the Republicans and the Democrats, if you understand what I'm saying? Like, to be consistent, that it wouldn't just be an issue with the Republicans that have used that system to their advantage, but you also have the Democrats using the same system to their advantage. Would that not require us to say that?
Yes, I agree with that. It does. I read a book, or not the whole book, but I started to read a book from Greg Palast about those elections. And he says also the Democrats used things to cheat. So also they are not playing fairly, but the scale of the cheating is really on the side of the Republicans much, much higher. All those voter restriction laws, a few hundred laws they issued only in the past 4 years, and they were requested only by the Republicans. So it's the Democrats are not pure, free from sin, and the sin is the compromising. But this voter restriction really goes back on the Republican side in the first place.
Okay, so I guess in connection with that, for me, I was just wondering that, okay, if it is that way, then would that do we have like a prophetic model that that identifies the issue of like what you're claiming, that the election is stolen, for example? Because if we look at, for example, 2016, I remember Elder Tess did speak about how the King of the South, who is Pyrrhus, is involved in in that battle with Demetrius and Antigonus and all. And that's how she brings in Russia in connection with the 2016 election being that battle, right? And then when we look at that Battle of Ipsus, what that model, what it's telling us basically is that you have the Demetrius being backed by Pyrrhus, and you have Antigonus, right, being Hillary Clinton, and then on the other side you have Trump, and they are all fighting for the same three branches, which is the allied powers, right? So they are basically not fighting against each other, but they are fighting to win the three branches of government, right? And when you look at that model, it does not actually address anything to do with cheating or voter fraud. That is then mentioned, of course, in the story, that we identified that there was collusion and all of that. But the model itself is not identifying that, but it's identifying a different story altogether, right? So I was just wondering that when you are identifying the skill of the election, is that based upon a model or a logic? A prophetic model, or it's a logic?
Yes. So 2016, I only mentioned because it was an election between a man and a woman. And I heard someone saying that a woman can never win. A woman could not win in 2016. A woman could not win in 2024. I think this is not true, because in 2016, Hillary Clinton had the popular vote, and we had the interference of Russia. So I really think she would have won. But for 2016, I don't have a prophetic model for it to prove it. This is just my understanding. Now in 2024, we also have Russian interference. For example, there were 200 bomb threats on electoral offices, where they had to evacuate the offices, and this was a disruption during the voting process, and it made people fear to go voting. And those 200 bomb threats were mainly on Democratic districts. So, and those bomb threats came from Russian email accounts. So there's clearly also a Russian interference in that, which we can trace back to 2016. Now my prophetic model for 2024 is X28, the line, because we see the same characteristics of 2000, 2001 repeated in 2024, 2025. We see at those waymarks of the ship, we see the symbol of a volcano at both waymarks, the east wind at both waymarks, and I have shown those different symbols. So both waymarks have similar symbols. And this is my evidence. Then I also use Michael Moore, because Michael Moore was the first messenger, the prophet for the Nethinims. And he understood the waymark of 2001 for the Nethinims correctly. Now he is not correct anymore, but back then he was the prophet. And if you rewatch Fahrenheit 9/11, I really recommend just the first 10 minutes. He's really tying both together, the sin that the country committed at the certification, and then 9/11. So this I would have as prophetic evidence. And additionally to that, this is really based on Pedro's study, which he did in November last year, which was not much accepted in the movement. But I think he was really right. He said Kamala Harris would win the election, but Trump would be certified based on his application of X27. So this is for me my prophetic evidence. And this, in my understanding, already got fulfilled in January. And also in the study, he did the time prediction, which is part of Exeter, and he used the calculation with the fathoms that really pointed to January 2025.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, it's Natalie again. I think you just answered my question I was going to ask you. I'll just make sure. You say the Sunday law is in 2025 and you're going by, is it January, and Pedro's study and other things you've said?
Yeah, I would place the marker for shipwreck, I would place in January. But there in the Sunday law waymark, we expect many events like the death of the King of the South. I would expect to see east wind. We expect different things, also something internal in the movement. All this I would expect within the year of 2025.
So no particular marker for this year, just those things that you've mentioned for the Sunday
Yeah,
law.
shipwreck I would mark in January. And the other events, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Emma, you wanted to ask something?
Yeah, it was similar to Natalie's question, I suppose. In the sense of, are you saying Sunday law is a period from January and this the whole year, 2025? And when you talked about an Islamic attack on American soil, you kind of referenced that as, is that a cause and effect? Because you talk about a dictator getting power and popularity when a crisis happens. Do you see that as a catalyst for then Trump to do something more radical? What are you seeing as the Sunday law in that sense? If you're thinking that, oh, you're saying the Sunday law is January, but it's a period.
Yeah, I think the waymarks are whole years, because we had 1798. We had not only the Pope taken captive, but we have also from Josiah Litch, the other events like Napoleon going to Egypt and all of this. And this happens within that year. It belongs to the time of the end waymark. In 1989, also, it's not only the fall of the Berlin Wall, but also events before. So I definitely would see the Sunday law as the year of the Sunday law as the waymark. And within that year, there are different dates to different stories, like the death of the King of the South. I would not have to see in January. It could be in February or March or whenever. I would just take the year. And this is the waymark. And then, of course, begins the Sunday law period that goes until close of probation.
Okay, so when you say it's a period, so once the whole year's passed, are you expecting, say, Concord, the next waymark on the line, to be after 2025? Or is that part of the Sunday law period up to close of probation?
I think it's after 2025.
Okay,
or
so
I mean, we had in 2021, we had two waymarks. We had August, eternal August and October. So I don't know, I don't have a proof to say it's not, it could also be in 2025. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. But I think we are not yet in Concord.
no, and you wouldn't expect to be until Islam attacks, would you, though? Because that's part of the Sunday law period. And with Sunday law period, you mean up to Concord. You don't mean up to close of probation. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Clarity.
Hi, Elena. So I had another question about the line of Christ that you drew out. The way you mark the triumphal entry and etc. If I remember correctly, you quoted Desire of Ages. I can't remember which chapter it was, where Ellen White says that Jesus, Ellen White says there was still time for Israel to repent and
Mhm.
you take that and then you apply it to this triumphal entry and point to the fact that that's the point when probation for the nation closed.
Yeah.
How do you reconciliate the fact that throughout the Bible, with the 70 weeks and etc., and Ellen White's writings and the Millerites' understanding, they pointed to the fact that probation for the institution of Israel closed in 34 AD. So after the triumphal entry, after Jesus, after etc., it wasn't just about the preaching to the Jews as a people. It was when their nation was left unto them desolate and etc. So yeah, how do you reconciliate the two waymarks for when probation closes for the institution, not talking about individuals?
Yes, I think it's just another layer. It's just another line. We have the line of Jesus the priest, and we have the line of Christ, our original line, the Omega line of ancient Israel. Was it Omega? Yes, Omega line of ancient Israel, and this line goes until 100 AD. So this line is different. These are two lines, two layers. And the line of Jesus the priest is about Jesus the priest. It's not about the disciples or the people of Israel. It's about Jesus the priest. It's his life from birth to ascension. So 34 AD, it's perfect. In the other line, in the other story, it's two levels, and the triumphal entry, it's the chapter "Thy King Cometh," and there she talks about the gate of mercy that are closed on that day of the triumphal entry. So you can read it in the context. She really says it's closed when the sun sets. And this is the triumphal entry. This is the chapter of Thy King Cometh. So it's just a different layer, I would say.
So when you say this is a line of Jesus as a priest, wouldn't the events have to be pointing to him and not the nation?
I think this line gives us many, many details on different in the first place, it talks about the experience of Jesus himself, but it also gives us many other details for us, for what happened to the people, how they accepted him, what happened to the disciples. So I just took that detail out because for me it is a marker. It is a confirmation that we can place the triumphal entry at the Sunday law waymark, because we have the close of probation of the institution of the SDA there already established. So when I see the triumphal entry and I see there the close of probation, I know I can place it at that waymark.
Okay, thank you for answering.
Okay, Andres?
Yeah, hi, Elena. I was wondering if you could walk me over the logic. If I'm not mistaken, you're saying the star for the Magi is the Islamic State, right? Or represents these. So can you walk me through the logic of how to get to that conclusion again? Maybe like
You mean the group or the star?
the star.
Okay, so I just took the study of Elder Tess, where she placed the star at 9/11. So this I just took it from her because she said it was the sign. It was compared to the dove and the voice of Jesus that came down from heaven at the baptism in the other line. So the star is, I think that is established. It's at 9/11. And then I wanted to know, because it's always about the harbinger. People always say the harbinger is for close of probation, not for the Sunday law because of the quote 9011, which is okay. But we take the concept of the harbinger, we took from this line, we took it from the line of the Magi, the star to the promised one. So we have our first reference should be the line of the Magi to which waymark points the star. And then I tried to show with this line that it points on this line, it points to the Sunday law waymark and not to close of probation. And when we have the star at 9/11, we see in that line that the star appears again at 2021 and again at the Sunday law waymark. So when we say 9/11 is the star, then it must appear in 2021 and it must appear at the Sunday law waymark. 9/11 is clear, it appeared there, but what was in 2021 and what was in, or what will be in 2025. And I believe it's the east wind, because the east wind is Al-Qaeda, and then the transfer of leadership to ISIS, which I explained in my older studies. So we saw Al-Qaeda in 9/11, we saw ISIS in 2021 attacking the USA, and therefore my conclusion is, because we have to start at the Sunday law waymark again, my conclusion is that we will see ISIS at the Sunday law waymark again as an outward sign to know we have arrived at our point of destination.
Okay, and then so the attack at the Sunday law, are you expecting it to be particularly in US soil? Or can it be like the 2021, which wasn't in US soil, I believe you mentioned?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2021 was the attack in Afghanistan against the US soldiers. I believe, yes, it has to be on US soil, but it can also be something simultaneously also in Europe and other places of the world. I don't know, but it is especially a scourge against the army of Rome. It should hurt them in their heart, in their own country. Yeah, 9/11, if we take it from the line of Acts 28, the same symbols at 9/11 and at the Sunday law waymark, I really think this is our reference point, and this was why they were so successful, because they managed to attack the country on their soil. This makes it much more powerful than if they would attack them somewhere else, in some other country.
Yeah, and why does the 2021 not have to be in US soil? Why is it allowed to be somewhere else?
Because 2021 is not the sin and the scourge. We saw them there at January 6th. It was almost a sin. It was almost democracy fallen, but the ship, they cast the 4 anchors and saved democracy. So democracy was strong enough to survive. That's why I don't see a scourge there. I don't see the 2021 attack as the scourge, just as a warning. It was January 6th was a warning. It was a breach for democracy. And in August 2021, the attack was also a warning. They showed we are there, we can attack you, we will attack you as well. That's just like a little foretaste, but it was not the scourge that I would expect to see at the Sunday law waymark in comparison to 2001.
So the scourge you're taking, like the concept of the scourge and the sin, you're taking it from a different line, right? Because in the line of the Magi is just a star, and it's the same in 2021 and the Sunday law, isn't it? It just appears there.
Yeah. Yeah, in the line of the Magi, we don't have the concept of the scourge, no. We have just the outward sign for us. It's just for us an external event, an outward sign to see we are in 2001 we have arrived at a certain waymark, and 21 and 25 we will arrive at a certain waymark. That's all. It has the attack in the line of the Magi has no meaning. It's just directing us like a road sign.
Okay, and so the last one is, I think, kind of tied to Blessing's question in the beginning. Do you agree with the concept that if Islam is punishing the glorious land, then that means that you're not making necessarily Trump the king of the North? Or how do you define the king of the North then in that scenario?
I think I don't know if I can answer the questions regarding the king of the North. I don't have fully understand who exactly the king of the North is. What I expect is Trump's approval ratings now are very bad. They went from January 20, they went down and down and down. Yesterday I read that they are, after 100 days of office, they are extremely down. So it was like in 2001, after Bush won the election with so many problems, people really didn't accept him, and he couldn't, the people were very divided. So someone who wants to be a dictator, who wants to have full power, he needs a national crisis. You see that in the history with Hitler, with many other dictators in the beginning, the people do not accept them really as full authority over them. So, but when a national crisis is, as this book says, they rally around the flag, and all of a sudden bipartisan laws are possible, like the Patriot Act would never have been possible before 9/11, but afterwards the Democrats, they all agree with it. They come in unity, they have to, and the people have to support. So I think Trump, to extend his power, to be even more dictatorial, he needs a national crisis, and this will happen when there is an attack.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we're coming up to 1:30. So Emma, what do you want to do? Do you want to carry on with questioning?
You can decide.
Emma?
Yeah, that's fine. We can go till 2.
Okay, all right. So it's open now to anybody who's got any questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marshall's got his hand up.
Marshall, do you want to go ahead?
Hi, Debbie. I had a question on the issue of establishing a dictator. I remember from okay, let me put it this way. On the subject of World War II and World War I, because when we consider the story of Pyrrhus, which gave us World War II, we understand World War II to be a continuation of World War I, and the Fourth Diadochi War being a continuation also of the Third Diadochi War. And when we came to the establishment of a dictator, we marked November 9, 2019 being the establishment of the dictator. And when we then considered World War I, we had the beginning of World War I was afterwards. Let's see. I'm just trying to look at my notes. There were two lines of World War I and then our application of 1989 coming forward. And if we remember, at the beginning of those lines, there were two entities in the Third Diadochi War. It's Seleucus, Antigonus. And we had a problem because these two were identified as the king of the north. So how would we handle that? That's one. Two, in, I think, application, we marked the breaking of the horn, the breaking of the horn. We could mark it in 2016, the Battle of Ipsus, with Pyrrhus influencing that war, the King of the South influencing that war, and seeing how the youth, Trump eventually won that election through support from Putin. Then in 2019, we could also mark the breaking of the horn with the establishment of a dictatorship. So if we are now identifying 2025 as the establishment of dictatorship, how do we reconcile that with these previous studies? I think this is where my question was coming from. I might not have expressed it clearly, but I hope it makes sense.
Yes, I think it's a progression. We have Elder Parmina said that where do we place the Seventh Kingdom? It depends on the level we are looking at. We can place them at 1989. We can place them at 1798. We can place them at the Sunday Law. It really depends where we mark it, which story we are looking at, and it's a progressive story. It goes from 1798 all the way through until the final end. It does not end at the Sunday Law. It's still a progression. But we are looking for the waymark of the Sunday Law. It's a marker in that progression, and the question is, where do we put that marker? And I just, because we have the Acts 27, the shipwreck, the question is where would we put the shipwreck? And Elder Terry would put it in July. I would put it in January. That's where I would put the marker. But it does not mean that we saw dictatorship already rising or standing up before, and that we will see it afterwards, still getting worse and worse. But I think at some waymark we have to place the marker, and this is where I would say the speaking, the lamb-like dragon, the speaking of a dragon. The speaking is the legislative and executive. I don't know the quote from Ellen White, where she says that. And this is, in my opinion, January 20, when he began to speak, to issue decrees and have the power. And this is the marker I would place for the lamb-like beast speaking like a dragon.
Okay. It's okay.
Let me know if it doesn't make sense or it didn't answer your question.
I think for now, I'll let someone else ask whilst I'm gathering my thoughts here.
Okay.
I know that Andres and Curtis have still got their hands up. I don't know if that's meant to be. Their hands are still meant to be up or not.
I meant to lower mine, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Curtis, did you mean to ask a question? Your hand was up as well.
I have many questions, but I really do want to give other people a chance.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for Eleanor?
So I don't, well, I do have questions, but currently Charity asked me to ask on her behalf, but I'm not sure if what she's asking me to ask is different from what she asked. I'll just read her message, Elena, if that's okay.
Okay.
So she says, going back to the election fraud, because she had asked you about voter fraud and election fraud. So her internet is bad. That's why she can't ask the question. So she says, going back to the election fraud, if we have to see the problems with the electoral system, if we have to see the problems with the electoral system being taken advantage of by both parties, then what allows us to identify the Republicans as cheaters when they win, but not do the same for the Democrats because they have won? They have won. I think it's one as in to win elections as well. If the system has had problems for long from the beginning, would we not be required to identify both parties as having problems? Why are the Republicans the problem and not the Democrats? Does that make sense?
Yes, because it's proven that the voter restriction is affecting minorities, Black community especially, and there is a percentage, but I don't know it, but it's definitely on the side of the Democrats, the Democratic voters that are suppressed by far more. Yeah, all those laws, they really aim the Black community to restrict them from voting. Other people with Latinos, Asian groups. The SAFE Act goes especially against married women. So all these laws clearly go against the population that would vote normally for Democrats. This is very clear. Peter Thiel said they don't want all people to vote. They don't want women to vote because they overwhelmingly vote for Democrats. So it is clear. I think if the elections were fair, the Democrats, when they won an election, they would have won it even with a higher margin if there was no voter suppression. So yeah, I believe it's clear that it's on the side of the Republicans. It's racism, sexism behind all of that, and their fear to lose their supremacy.
Okay. I'm sure she'll listen to it later on.
Okay.
Thanks. I had a question of my own, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Do you have an understanding or interpretation of the damage of the ship in 2001? You know, when the east wind started blowing, it says the ship was damaged beyond repair. Do you have an understanding of what that looks like in reality? Do you have an opinion on that?
That's a good question. I think what followed afterwards was that the country, they issued the Patriot Act, which was against privacy. I think Bush had showed very dictatorial traits. Then also his position in the world. He showed clearly he wants a unilateral world order. He said, who is against me, who is not for me is against me. All the countries that criticized the USA, for example, and Germany back then, there were tensions between Germany and the USA, but after 9/11, immediately they showed their complete loyalty. All the European states were loyal and supported the US. So the US can gain from that and power, but at the same time, it destroys even more democracy, and that the remaining things of democracy that existed in the country, they get destroyed.
Okay.
But it's a good question. I think I have to think about it more. There's more to it, definitely.
Okay, that's all right. So just as a follow-up on that, I'm not, holding you to what you said, but would you see Bush and his administration as fundamentally opposed to the institutions of America, whether it's democratic values and ideals, the security architecture that existed to prevent another World War II like event from happening, NATO alliances, promotion of democracy abroad? Would you see Bush as representative of an opposition to that? Why I ask that question is because our understanding of the King of the North is the King of the North, Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, as a destroyer, a hammer. Whoever Nebuchadnezzar is, whoever the King of the North is actually fundamentally against those institutions. So would you see Bush and his administration fulfilling that characteristic?
Yes, I think he was really corrupt, and in Florida back then, the governor was his brother, Jeb Bush, and there was, when you watch the Fahrenheit 9/11, there was so much corruption behind the curtain with Bush and his associates. So of course, when we compare him with Trump today, it's he looks fine, and Trump is the bad one. But back then, he already had those authoritarian traits, and did not act like a true democratic person. I would really say that, yeah.
Okay. So one more question from me. It's about media, information sources.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that when it comes to the issue of, I don't remember how exactly you put it, but you said we cannot trust the mainstream media because they identify the 2024 election as free and fair. We would have to trust independent investigative journalists. So my question to you is, are you saying we trust them on some subjects, we don't trust them on this subject? Because you've obviously used mainstream media sources for a lot of the information that you presented to us. So if you are saying, on some things you can trust them, on 2024 election you can't, my question is, what is it that allows us to distinguish between when we can trust the mainstream media and when we can't? And a second sub question to that is, do we have an alternative to the professionals that exist in the media ecosystem? Because they're the ones that are actually educated to provide information on what's happening in our world. Yeah. So the first bit is, are you saying we separate 2024 election from everything else when it comes to media sources? then the second part of the question is, do we actually have an option when it comes to media sources? Or
Yes,
yeah, that's summary of the question.
Okay. Yes, it's really we have to be able to sift the good media. So, for example, on Islam, it's really difficult to get good articles about the real problems with radical Islam from the left sources. Sometimes I read more right-wing mainstream sources about Islam because they are more critical. But of course, it's dangerous. You have to be able to sift. But that's what I think Alda Tess wanted to show us in the Vespers, that we really have to sift the left-wing media. And now, when we are closer and closer to the end, information warfare continues. So also this continues. And the Washington Post, for example, under Jeff Bezos, changed in the last year tremendously. So when he is supervising what is published and what is not, we know for sure that some things he would not allow to be published. And not only the Washington Post, but also the other media sources. We have to be really careful. And regarding the election being free and fair, also already in 2001, the media didn't want to publish those concerns. The book of Greg Palast, when he describes how he wanted his investigations about voter suppression during the 2000 election, when he wanted those to be published, he sent them to different media outlets, and they all refused. One argument is that they don't want to get the people not trust into the elections anymore, because this already is very bad for democracy. But also there's a lot of corruption in the background, and they have this or that reason for not publishing those investigations. It was already a problem in 2000. So you can read the book. It's really interesting how he explains it. So yeah, we have to be wise, and we have our prophetic lines. Therefore, we know where it is going. But at the same time, we still have to, we rely on the media, of course, to know about external events. So yeah, it's difficult. We have to sift and be very wise.
Okay, so sorry, before you move on.
Sorry.
So in summary, then, would I be correct in saying that it's like, because you had said in the presentation that we cannot trust the mainstream media, but what I'm hearing you say now is that we have to sift information that is provided to us by these information sources, these journalists, these reporters, investigators, which is something we've always had to do, I think.
I only said we cannot trust them in regards to the topic when they say the election of 2024 was free and fair. We cannot trust because we just know by definition, with voter suppression laws, with gerrymandering, an election is by definition not free and fair, but the media said this. So this is what because we know better, we know the history, so we cannot trust them when they say this. That's all I wanted to say when I said we cannot trust the media.
Okay. Would that not be working outside the system? When like there's a general concept that we are constrained by the rules and institutions that we have for anything, whether it's legal institutions, media, religion, etc. We are constrained to work within what we have within professional bounds. So if professionals, as erring as they are, but they're probably better at this than most of us, and have studied political history, science, etc., in much more depth than many of us. If those established sources are not saying much with regards to a particular claim, can we go against that? Like, can we use our faith or religion as a reason to go against that? Wouldn't that be in opposition with the concept that I think we would all agree to, which is,
But
in order to be
wouldn't you
successful,
think,
we have to work within the system?
yeah, but wouldn't you think that in an information war, all media in future will be manipulated? I mean, Elon Musk could buy CNN all of a sudden and whatever. I don't. Also, the Democrats, when they say the election is free and fair because it is their narrative now, they have to say it. So how can we trust it when we know better from history, just by the facts?
I guess my point is, things like that can happen where sources become compromised, but we don't have alternatives to established media institutions. So if CNN is saying something that clearly doesn't make sense, there will always be 5 other sources that will speak more reasonably. They might not be 100% correct, but they will always be there. So if Bezos is now backtracking because he fears the future of his business, and it might limit some of the things that are reported by the Washington Post, we still have the New York Times, we still have CNN. I'm just giving examples. It doesn't have to be these particular ones, but I'm just saying there's a general recognition that, when it comes to health, we go to doctors and people in the health research field to inform us when it comes to issues to do with our health. And when it comes to political history, political events, current affairs, these are the people we go to. I don't see us having an alternative to that simply because we are a prophetic movement. Do you see it any different?
Yeah, I still read the Times and Foreign Affairs and many other sources. We rely on them definitely, but at the same time we have to sift.
I understand sifting. What I was saying is, if the professionals that we have in health are all saying one thing, and then a maverick doctor says another thing, what's the safety in going with that one maverick doctor when the majority of the health professionals are telling you that, for example, COVID was caused by a virus from bats, not from a lab leak? I'm just giving an example. I'm not getting into the details of that theory or anything. That you've got one maverick doctor that says they're a doctor and they say something different from the establishment. But the establishment is generally saying, this came from bats. We sift, yes, but is there safety in going with the maverick? Because I thought our safety is in a multitude of counselors in the establishment, as it were, the system.
Yeah, but at the same time, the majority does not always is on the right side.
Okay, that's all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Elena. Are we going to end our question and answers
Please, could I
now,
ask
Emma?
one last question?
Oh, sorry, Curtis, go ahead.
If that's okay with you, Elena, if you have to
Yes,
go,
sure.
then that's fine.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to go to the ship of Acts 27, where you have Puteoli, and etc. So I appreciate that you don't want to specifically box in who the King of the North is and who the Sixth Kingdom is specifically. My question isn't about who, it's about the what, so to speak. So would you agree that the judgment against the Sixth Kingdom is the King of the North?
Judgment against the
So God brings Babylon to judge Israel, the glorious land.
Yes.
And then judgment against the king of the north, the armies of Rome, is the east wind.
Yeah, I think we could say that, yeah.
Yeah. So they're two different scourges against two different entities, whoever they are. So then when we talk about the ship that's shipwrecked in...
But who would you say is the army of Rome?
I like you, I don't want to go into that now because I think it takes away from the question that I'm going to ask.
Okay.
I'll share my opinion later if that's okay, but my question's not really about who. So when we go to Acts 27, that's a story about the Sixth Kingdom, that ship, Alexandria. So when you put judgment at, well, not you, I think we can agree that there's judgment at the Sunday law, but that judgment is coming from against the Sixth Kingdom from the King of the North. So that ship gets shipwrecked and the King of the North is the one that's judging it. Is that how you see it?
You mean not the east wind?
Because the Sixth Kingdom is judged by the King of the North. We agreed that.
Yeah, but at 2001, when there was the destruction of the ship, the hitting of the ship, you would say this was east wind, right?
And so that's where Blessing's question comes in, is how do we understand that? Because we can't have two different models like in tension with each other. Because as I think you've articulated, the east wind is specifically against the armies of Rome. They're not against anyone else. When you read through Revelation, it's about protecting God's people and punishing Rome for their crimes. And so that 2001 story, I think, needs clarification and needs to be ironed out because, as you've just pointed out, there's, I don't want to say contradictions, but there's things that don't make sense. So basically, my point is that story of the ship being the Sixth Kingdom, the Lamb. When you get to the Sunday law, my first question is, why do you put Puteoli there without saying that there's judgment and so Puteoli needs to go there? Like, it's kind of reverse engineering when you do that. You have to have a reason to put Puteoli there. And then the second one is, as you distinguished between the North and the South, Ellen White will describe their sins as two different things. So I wanted to hear your thoughts about what specifically the sin is of the Sixth Kingdom that the King of the North is judging it for, and what the sin of the Seventh Kingdom, the King of the North, that the East Wind is judging it for. I don't know, does my question make sense? Because they can't be the same sin, or else they'd just be the same entity.
First of all, Puteoli I placed at the Sunday law because the ship of Alexandria, the second ship of Alexandria, ends there. It's just the beginning and the end of the institution. 1798, Alexandria, and Puteoli is the end harbor where the ship ends, their journey ends. So at the Sunday law is the end of the institution. I just take it from the other two lines from the ship.
Like Tess, she extends that. So it's not necessarily that that's where the story ends. So you have to put it there at the Sunday law, because then that logic would mean that Tess was wrong by extending the journey.
No, I think she just did another application, because she did the application because the two ships are called the ship of Alexandria. So she made it one line. But I think it's two separate ships. I agree with that application, but I think we can do another application when we just take every ship by its own and make a line of every ship. So we have 3 lines of a ship, and the ship is an institution. Therefore, I just make of the third ship, I just make a third line.
That's fine. I'm not questioning whether you can do that or you can't do that. I think that's fine if to create that third line. I was just saying, from what I understood, your reasoning is that you end that third line that you created at the Sunday law, because the ship ends its journey at Puteoli, and it has to be at the Sunday law because that's where the ship ends. So my inference was that when Tess extends that line beyond where the ship ends at the Sunday law, she must be wrong in doing that. I'm not saying that you are, in creating your third line, is in tension with the second line. That's not my question. It's the reasoning that you have to end it at Puteoli. Exactly. Because Tess is going to end her story at Puteoli, but Puteoli is going to go beyond where shipwreck happens. Does my question make sense?
But so you would not agree with Elder Tess' application?
I'm not saying I don't agree with it. I want to know what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I said for me it's a second application.
Okay. We can talk more about this one in person. But then the next question. Did you have thoughts on that?
Repeat it, please. Sorry.
It was about the fact that the sin of the Sixth Kingdom and the Seventh Kingdom are different, and the scourges against them are also different. One is the East Wind against the King of the North, and one is the King of the North against the Sixth Kingdom. So their sins have to be different. Like their things that they're being punished for are different. So I wanted to understand how you view those sins. Like, what is the sin of the Sixth Kingdom and what's the sin of the Seventh Kingdom? Yeah.
Yeah, I would compare it with the Millerite line. So we have slavery that was placed by the South. So this is the sin, inequality of the Sunday law movement, and the North compromised for the sake of the Union. And Ellen White says that the South committed the sin anyway. They were bad anyway from the beginning, but the North should have known better. They were for equality, so they should have fought for equality and not compromise. So this is the big sin that they committed at the Sunday law in 1850. So I would parallel this to the Democrats or the Sixth Kingdom. This is the big sin, that they compromised, that they did not fight against Trump anymore in the last months, and that they certified him into the office.
Okay, which is fair. I get that. So the reason why I wanted to bring these two questions is now to go back to the Puteoli one, where the ship is shipwrecked. Who is doing that shipwreck? Like, what's the cause of that shipwreck? Because in the story that you've explained of 1850, the South are going to punish the North with that war, with the Civil War. I think Ellen White describes it that way, even, that there were some battles where the North were meant to win, but the South just ends up winning, and etc., etc. So there at the Sunday law, where you have Puteoli, you attach that, well, from what I understood, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you attach that to the East Wind, and the East Wind being the thing that punishes that Sixth Kingdom for its compromise. But in these other models, we don't have that same framework.
You were saying that you believe the seventh kingdom is judging or punishing the sixth kingdom, and I would agree with that. I think it's just another layer. It's another story, another layer of the whole.
Sorry, which is the other story? Which is the other layer?
Yeah, that Eastwind is punishing as well.
The sixth kingdom.
Yeah, at the Sunday law.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks for your answer.
Okay.